Hey everyone, welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. This is your host Vansh, and joining me here is my usual guest that I have after every major, and the one and only Steve Flink, a man who needs no introduction by now. And these are always a blast, Steve, and I'm really happy to talk about this fortnight with you.
Yeah, Quantum, it was a good one. It was a very good fortnight. Went by quickly. 15 days, if we want to be entirely accurate, but they got over all the rain in the first week. It was tough conditions for the players with the rain every day for about first week. But then things really did improve, and the tennis flourished after that.
Absolutely. And, coming into the tournament on the men's side specifically, there were a lot of question marks surrounding the usual top players, right? I mean, there were several conversations happening that this, is much more open than in previous years. Because usually we've had, Rafa and Novak kind of leading the pack and, now with the emergence of Alcaraz and Sinner. But given the injuries concerns that were surrounding them, and the fact that all the lead-in tournaments were won by your Casper Ruud, Tsitsipas, Zverev, Rublev, if you want to throw him in as well, you figured that those guys have a really good shot to win it. But at the end, we ended up having, Alcaraz and Sinner in the semis, and we ended up having Casper Ruud and Zverev, and obviously the unfortunate thing that happened with Djokovic and the knee injury. So how do you kind of look at that at the end, given the conversations that were coming in?
I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what you mean. How do I look at?
How do you kind of assess where we ended up versus?
Oh yeah. Well, you made a good point. It was more wide open. That there were more threats this time. It was a slightly tougher call. I before the tournament, I was in the camp that thought Zverev was well positioned to win it, and he nearly did. Obviously, came within a set. But then I guess what surprised me the most was how well both Sinner and Alcaraz recovered to set up their semi with the winner going on in the final, and in Carlos's case, taking the title. I had doubts about both just because Sinner had been not only injured but sick, and his preparation was badly damaged. And then Carlos, he plays the one tournament against Rublev. He couldn't play Rome. He couldn't play the first couple. He lost to Rublev in the quarters of the one that he played. And that wasn't great preparation either. And you still wondered about his arm. He's wearing the sleeve that he'd been wearing previously. And you thought, okay, can he really deal with that for a fortnight? And is he really going to be able to hit his forehand as freely as he would like to? And he answered all those questions. So it was fascinating. The way it did play out was that Carlos, at long last, who's been a strong candidate to win this title for 3 years in a row now, losing 2 years ago to Zverev in the quarters and then the cramps against Djokovic in the semis last year. And now he wins. And it's a logical progression. It's just that I didn't think the timing was going to be great given his physical condition, everything he'd been through. But I think the draw was good, and I think he just picked up doses of confidence with every win that he recorded. And so that by the time he got to Sinner in the semis, he was ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't by any means, the vintage Alcaraz that, let's say, won Wimbledon last year. He really had to struggle along the way, find his range, down 2-1 in both the semis and the finals to come back and win those two 5-setters there. I mean, that really took some effort.
It did, absolutely did. And it is, I've always felt, and I think you probably agree with me, that he's one of these guys that, okay, maybe he's always going to be prone to suffering some unexpected losses and have some bad days here and there, but he never loses faith in himself. He went all that period from Cincinnati last year up until Indian Wells, won Indian Wells. Then he, had some more injury problems, and as we just alluded to, with the clay court circuit after having lost to Dimitrov in Miami. But again, when the opportunity was there in Roland Garros, he was ready to take it. I feel like he has supreme confidence in himself and knows that his game can come around at any time. Plus, I always feel like he's going to make it very difficult for the guys to finish him off, which is what we discovered in both the semis and finals. It's one thing to be one set away and seemingly within striking distance of beating him, but he makes it so tough when he plays the way he did at the tail end of the semis and the finals. So I was very impressed with him. I really was. I mean, of the three majors, He wins the U.S. Open, as you well remember, over Casper Ruud, and that was after a string of 3 5-set matches in a row, and that was also impressive as a breakthrough triumph at 19. But then we have him winning Wimbledon last year. You just referenced that, and that was also highly impressive to beat Novak in a 5-set match when he was 1 point away from trailing 2-0, and when Djokovic had that swing volley that would have given him the break for 2-love in the 5th set. So that, again, fending off a 7-time champion to win your first Wimbledon title in 5 sets in the final is a mighty accomplishment. And now this, to back-to-back 5-setters and back-to-back 5-setters where he's trailing 2-1. So I think it was a major statement from him, and he just showed us that he is a great champion. There's just no getting around it. And here he is with 3 majors at 21, and he'll keep piling them up.
Yeah, absolutely. And he still has basically until 2027 to try to win, the Australian Open, and then he can become still the youngest to hold all 4, which is astounding. Yeah,
no, listen, it was a great fortnight for him. He was very honest, and I really don't think this was sort of self-protection, but at one stage early in the tournament, I remember him saying he hadn't really come in thinking his chances were that great. Now he was thinking they maybe were a little bit better. But I think it took victory after victory to make him believe. And by the time he got to the semis, I do think he believed, although he was in a very precarious position twice in that match before pulling it out. But listen, it's kind of, there's a certain logic to his progression there at Roland Garros. And we always knew, there was always the debate, is Carlos better on clay or hard? And it's a tough debate. But I think he loves playing on clay. There's no doubt that this is a title he will win many times. This is not going to be his lone French Open title. And I think he's always going to love to play on the dirt. And so it just made sense. It just happened that he got on board on hard courts and grass first because he's such a versatile, gifted player. But it was high time, I guess. You looking back on it now, it all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you sized up the progression well, and especially how good he is on clay. But let's talk about the semifinal actually with Sinner, because in the beginning it was all Jannik for the first 10 games of the match. He was up 6-2, 2-0. And there were a lot of swings, and we're so used to really high quality stuff from them. I think about their 2022 U.S. Open quarterfinal, and one of the highest quality matches I've seen this decade. All 5 sets were just tremendously high quality from both players, and Sinner wasn't even the same player that he is now. It's so much more improved now. So coming into that match with Sinner getting that set and a break lead, things really started to shift Carlos's way, and then you had Jannik Sinner cramping at the start of the third. But that sort of flustered Alcaraz, I think, as and at times his level dipped quite dramatically in that third set, and then he really had to regroup and take sets 4 and 5 in the impressive fashion that he did without facing a break point. So what did you think about the quality of the match overall, and how?
I didn't think it was a great quality match. I thought it was a good quality match. And you're right. Yes, a Sinner is decidedly improved from the Sinner who played Alcaraz at the 22 Open and also beat him that year at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
But I honestly think I don't know. He's too classy and dignified a guy to come into a press conference after and say, I never felt right here physically. This was hurting. The hip wasn't right. I don't think he was, even though he was still so much better than all the rest of his opponents, dropping only 1 set on his way to the penultimate round. I don't know, maybe something was just a little bit missing to me. Even when he built the lead, I thought he was going to get better and better. He didn't. But that was very revealing. Think about it. You just said it yourself. 6-2, 2-love. That's some nice cushion. You don't have the second set wrapped up yet, but you figure from a 2-love lead and having a set in hand, that maybe he's at least good to win a longer set. Maybe even if Carlos starts playing better, Sinner allows him to break back, but then they stay on serve. Maybe they go to a tie break, and maybe Sinner can win that and go up 2 sets. That surprised me. I didn't think that Carlos was that good in the second set, just like I didn't think that Sinner was that good in the first. I just think they both were a little off their games at different times there that allowed each of them to go on a tear, because Sinner's was also 8 out of 10 games from a set. Carlos, excuse me. Carlos was also 8 out of 10 by coming from a set and 2 love down to win the second 6-3 and go up a break early in the third at 2-1. So that's where I think it got more interesting, and that's where, frankly, I think the level got a bit better. Is even though Sinner was cramping by the time after he'd broken back for 2-all in the third, in that long game that got him to 3-2, shaking out the hand, he managed to hold on. That was a big game to hold. And then, of course, he went on to break Carlos in the next game and won the set. And I felt like the hand was getting a little better. And even though he had his legs rubbed a little bit too at the next changer, he was looking pretty good there. And I thought the fourth set was very well played by both, because they both were barely losing points on their serve.
Yeah.
And Sinner, I think, had lost 3 points on his serve all the way up to 4-5. And Carlos was just as dominant in his 5 service games. And suddenly Sinner, from 30 love, you thought he was ready to hold for 5-all, and maybe we're heading toward a tiebreaker because they're both so dominant on serve. Carlos made one of those stupendous topspin forehand lobs. I mean, Sinner had approached deep into the forehand corner, and Carlos goes down the line over Sinner's head, and it was a brilliant lob. And Sinner tried to chase it down by the fence, and Carlos was there to put a drop volley into the open court. It was like magical point. But at 30-15, he somehow missed an overhead. I think Carlos stayed home, Vansh. I don't know if you had that view. Looked to me like because Carlos stayed home and stayed in the backhand side, and Sinner was going down the line there, that threw him a bit, and he missed it wide, because he should have made that smash. It was on the bounce. You don't see those guys miss too many when they take them on the bounce. You got time to set it up. And if he'd hit it hard and hit it well, it wouldn't have mattered that Carlos was over there. He would have been in good shape. That was a big point to lose, because instead of 30-all, instead of 40-15, it's now 30-all. And then Carlos, played a couple. He forced him into an error, and then on the set point, he hit a good cross. He hit a cross-court forehand that pulled Sinner off the court, but Sinner slipped. He just slipped a bit as he's following through on the forehand, and made it pretty easy for Carlos to drive his two-hander into the open court, cross-court. That was an amazing swing of 4 points that got Carlos into the 5th set. And I think it was really jarring to Sinner, who was feeling pretty good about the way he pulled out the 3rd set and was now holding serve so comfortably in the 4th, that he was in a position to win this. And then Carlos raced to that 3-love lead in the 5th and never lost his serve. As you pointed out, no break points in the 4th or the 5th for Sinner. And I don't know how you felt, Vansh. So I would say very good match, not their greatest, not anything like the 22 Open, but an impressive come-from-behind victory from Carlos, and one that showed his poise under pressure. And I don't think I've ever seen Sinner look more despondent after a loss. He went over to Carlos, they gave him a quick hug, and it was not begrudging, it was genuine hug, but you sense he was saying to himself, oh, God, why did it happen again? Because let's face it, at Indian Wells, he had a similarly great start to win the first set 6-1, and Carlos came back and didn't lose his serve again there either, winning the last 2 3-2. And I feel like Sinner, it dawned on him that both those matches, but particularly this time, it's hard when you've started that well, and all of the great players, we think of them as fantastic front runners. I do, at least. And so for Sinner to lose to his premier rival 2 times in a row, after taking decisive first sets, first in a best-of-3 out in Indian Wells, and now here in best-of-5 at Roland Garros, I think this one really hurt. It stung, which I liked, by the way. I liked it because he knows he's coming. He's now number 1 in the world. He feels like he belongs at number 1 in the world. And he feels like he can play Carlos. He doesn't expect to beat him every time out, but he knows he's going to at least, in his mind, hold his own. So to lose an agonizing 5-setter like that, and he pressed him in the last game, saved a couple of match points, but it was too late. But I've never seen him look quite like that after a loss. He's usually pretty. There's still some joviality left, and a smile and the hug lasts longer. This was like, okay, well done, Carlos, but I'm really annoyed. Did you have that same impression?
I did actually. Yeah, I did pick up on the fact that their hug or handshake at the net wasn't as, let's say it was still very respectful and very
Oh,
kind, but it
totally
wasn't
respectful.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a sense that Sinner was disappointed in himself for sure,
Yeah,
especially
he
how he
was
looked at the
disappointed, right, in
moment.
himself. Exactly, exactly. And he felt like, okay, I had two chances to take control of this match. I was up a set and two love, and then I came back from a breakdown. I won the third. I'm one set away. I'm 2-1. I'm holding serve quite easily all through the fourth. And how did this happen? Because I really believe there was a clear carryover into the fifth. It was no accident that Carlos raced off to that 3-love lead and got the break in the second game, because Sinner, I think in his mind, was still reeling a bit from having lost the fourth. And it was gave Carlos a big surge of energy and confidence to get back into the match again. So, but I like that. That's what you want to see from the best players. You don't want to see, you want to sense that those losses linger a bit, and that they're mad at themselves. They're not begrudging toward their opponent. He's not taking anything away from Carlos, but he now has the pride to believe that he got to number one for a reason. He wants to stay there. He won the first major of the year, so obviously if he would have won that match at Carlos and then gone on to beat Zverev, he's halfway to the Grand Slam, which would have been asking far too much, but it still would have been a brilliant start to the season. Instead, Carlos stings him again. And both times, I mean, Carlos is coming off a long slump in a way prior to that Indian Wells win. And this time he's coming off he hadn't done much since because of the injury and losing in Miami. And so I think Sinner feels like, I think in his mind, he believes he better win that next match. I don't think he wants to lose to him 3 times in a row. And because Carlos is the kind of guy who can we see what he does when he gets on top of guys like Tsitsipas, who he beat in straight sets again here. Certain players, they'll never think that way of Sinner, but Carlos he really gets fueled by beating his biggest rivals. And I think that gave him enough confidence that even though the final was difficult, he still thought he was going to win it, and in the end he did.
Yeah, you make some really good points. I want to touch a little bit on something in the fifth, because I felt like even though Alcaraz had that break and he got that start, he raced to a 3-love lead. There were some really close deuce games in there, 3-1 and 4-2 and 5-3. And I feel like Sinner might be a little disappointed in the fact that he had, Carlos on the deuce side. He kept hitting those slice serves over and over and over again.
Yeah, he did.
The same spot,
did.
And Sinner kept missing those returns long.
Which was inexplicable, don't you think? I didn't get that. There was no doubt that Carlos was going to keep going there until it backfired, and it just didn't backfire. And Sinner's forehand return these days, I thought, is normally more reliable than that. And when you break Carlos as many times as he did early, and then you can't get him in the last 2 sets, yeah, that was hard. You're right, but it was never enough to get to break point, though. It'd be one thing if he was squandering break points. Deuce is one thing, especially the last game. He did a nice job to stay in that game, but again, that forehand return in the deuce score, every time both times after saving the match point, it lets him down. And I think that probably bothered him a lot too. I think, frankly, we don't know it. I'm just speculating. I think, frankly, maybe physically he still wasn't quite there. He's close.
Yeah.
But it means it brings extra importance to me to the next time they meet, particularly the next time they meet at a big tournament. Like if they were to meet again, now they're 1-2 in the world. So they couldn't meet before the finals of Wimbledon, but wouldn't that be interesting if they met there again? Sinner's beaten them there before, but can he do it again now, given the big lift that Carlos got against him there? And that would be a fascinating match. I kind of hope we get it.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for that as well, especially if they're 1 and 2 seeds, and it looks unlikely now that Djokovic is going to play Wimbledon. So, it seems
Right.
like they will go in as 1 and 2, and they will meet in the final.
Well, that's the other thing. We could talk more about Novak a little later, because we still need to talk about the final, obviously, and a few other things. But I'm hoping, as a Djokovic admirer, that he resists the temptation, even if the doctors say, well, I suppose you could do it, you could play. I think it would be a mistake. I really do. I think he needs a little extra time, and the danger might be that he aggravates the injury. Who knows? I'd rather hear that they just told him don't do it, and that he listens and waits for the Olympics. Because although it's very disappointing not to have another crack at an 8th title, he just would be. He should take the time. He should go to the Olympics And then, he'll have a chance, all things being equal. He should have a chance at the end of the summer to really do some great things at the U.S. Open and maybe defend his title, because he will be at that stage, given how little tennis he's played this year. He's going to be fresher than the other top players, even playing the Olympics. So anyway, that's my hope there. So therefore, I'd be very surprised if we don't get a Sinner and Alcaraz as the top two seeds, and therefore not able to meet before the final of Wimbledon, which would be the fitting, it would be fitting for them to meet in the title round.
Yeah. I mean, there's a funny coincidence with their rivalry right now where it's playing out almost like a tiebreak. So like Carlos won the first, and then Jannik wins the next two, then Carlos wins the next two, and Sinner wins the next two. It's pretty interesting that way, that they're so even in the sense that they just keep getting each other back every single time. And I used to think like, okay, maybe there's something in that faster surfaces favor Sinner and slower surfaces favor Carlos.
No.
It hasn't really panned out like that. Like you're
right.
I can't really say anything. I feel like all of the matches are kind of hanging on the knife edge and balance.
But do you agree with my point that it hurts him a bit more? And I'm not saying he's going to be psyched out or despondent or coming in pessimistically to his next match with Carlos, but that it has to be a little extra disturbing to have won decisive first sets 2 matches in a row and not be able to cash in on it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I also think you're right about the physical issues as well, in the sense that I don't think he was 100% in terms of like all the way there in terms of his fitness. Because if you're in bed for like 2 weeks and you have an illness along with the hip stuff, it eventually was going to catch up to him at the end of the tournament. Because I actually remember also Gil Gross mentioning that towards the end of the Gasquet match, he thought, Sinner looked in kind of big trouble, even though, that's a match he was winning quite comfortably. And there was some signs throughout the whole tournament that,
Courier made the same comment as Gil, that he thought that Sinner was struggling a lot at the end of that match too. So listen, he's such a classy guy. I'm glad he didn't get into any of this when it was over. He did admit that he was very disappointed, but he didn't go into alibis, which is the last thing he needed to do. But I'm glad you saw it the way I did, and because I just think that may have been, something of a factor. And we can't know that he would have necessarily won the match, but that also may have been why he was disappointed. I mean, imagine if he's able to ride out that second set. I think, he would have felt like with the cushion of a 2-set lead, he could get that done in 3 or 4 sets. And it would have been a different kind of match than trying to recover, win the third as he did, and to finish it off in the fourth.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, going into the final against Zverev, there were a lot of question marks about, how both players would hold up if it did go 4 or 5. Also given the history of their rivalry, where you had Zverev coming in with a 5-4 head-to-head, you had a lot of one-sided victories by Alcaraz, but then you also had, Zverev beating him at the Australian Open, Roland Garros 2 years ago in the famous match there. So, coming into the match, I was slightly favoring Alcaraz, but not by much. I was certainly thinking that Zverev had a really good shot at winning as well.
Completely agree. No, completely agree. And I felt like we discussed it. I had a feeling it would be Carlos in 5, but I just felt like, boy, this is not one I'd want to be putting my life on the line for, because I respected what Zverev had done to get to the final, how committed he was to winning this tournament. And you didn't know necessarily exactly how Carlos would respond physically after a tough 5-setter, given the amount of time he'd been off with his arm problem. So, yeah, absolutely. And frankly, it played out the way you and I kind of thought it would, in the sense of thing being hanging in the balance. The fact that they both had their opportunities. I mean, what I found interesting, Vansh, is the first set, when there was still, and it was quite windy, obviously, and they're looking in the sun on their serves from that one end of the court too. And it seemed to me that Zverev was really surprised by Carlos returning serve almost Medvedev-like, not the same technique, but the positioning so far back against the fence almost. And I didn't think Zverev really, and later on, I felt the same way. He didn't adjust well to that. It baffled me that he, as a great server, wouldn't see that and say, okay, I've got to, especially in the deuce court, go wide in the deuce court more. He just didn't want to do that. He wanted to go down the tee a lot. Now, here and there, he went wide, but he could have served and volleyed wide more. and just didn't try. I think he could have taken some of that play away from Carlos if he would have been willing to try those things. But so sure enough, he's broken 3 times in that first set. And that's why I admired how well Carlos gradually started shifting the position and coming in more. It got closer to the baseline stages in the second and particularly in the third. And I think that actually helped Sasha. But still, the second set was very well played by, I thought, from Zverev from 1-2 down. That he'd almost gotten that break on Carlos in the first game and couldn't nail it down after Carlos wasted the 40-love lead. And then finally he did break him and broke him again. And Carlos looked a bit flat, a little bit out of sorts in that set. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but well played by Zverev. And the third, of course, was the best of the match and could well have been the set that led to the title for the German player. It didn't, but to 5-2 down, not only was he 5-2 down, he was 15-30 at 2-5, and he served his way out of that. And then Carlos got from love 30 back to 30 all and made an error at 30 all, and Zverev hits that great backhand pass, and suddenly it's 5-4. And the next thing you know, he's broken. He's held an easy hold and breaks, and he's serving for the set. And Carlos gave us a sign of what was to come, though, Vansh, in that tense game, I thought, when Zverev served it out, because it looked like it was going to be an easy hold. It was 30 love, and then Carlos is hitting those, lofting those high trajectory shots, and he's moves back and hits the high looping returns again, and he's kind of making Zverev think. And he managed to save a set point, get the break point. It was a tough, demanding game mentally for Zverev, not physically, more mentally, that he really wanted to close it out and did. And I had the feeling then, okay, if Zverev can make Carlos work hard in the fourth, at least, he's not necessarily going to end it in the fourth, but he's got to let him know, I'm here to win this title. I'm going to play every point. You're a little tired. I'm a little tired, but I'm not giving in now. What shocked me was the first 4 games of that fourth set. I didn't quite understand. A great forehand pass from Carlos to get the break down the line off the forehand. But the 5 points in 4 games for Zverev, after you work so hard to win 5 games in a row to go up 2-1. And I take nothing away from Carlos, who played well in that period and buckled down and cut down on his errors and didn't try to do anything too fancy. But I thought Zverev kind of conceded that set in a way. It was very strange. And even after he broke back to want to make it 4-1 and Carlos saw the trainer at the changeover, Zverev had that chance to hold. It could have been made it 4-2 and made it a little interesting at that point. And instead, he got broken again and wasted break points in the last game of the set. So it was a lot of, I thought he kind of let that set slip from his grasp a little unnecessarily. Not that Carlos didn't play well, but they got to the 5th set a little too quickly. I thought, that was strange given what it had taken to get up 2-1, that Zverev wouldn't play a bit better in the fourth. You can have a little letdown. I can see going down a break, but then making a push much sooner to get back into it, and he didn't. And Carlos was starting to move back again by then. He was making it tougher on the returns, but it was just not a good set from Sasha. A lot of loose points and errant forehands. I didn't like the way he played. So then we go to the 5th. And, that was an interesting set bunch because Zverev had the advantage of serving first. So he got that nice hold to start, played a pretty good first game. Carlos holds, and then that 1-1 game to me was the worst game of the match. And at the worst possible time for Sasha to come in and miss the backhand volley down the line with the court open. Carlos is not even chasing it. He's trapped on the other side. Then the kind of delayed serve and volley, and he butchers the forehand volley. Then the double fault, and then finally loses the game on a backhand unforced error. So 4 giveaway points and a giveaway break in a sense. And he still had that chance to break back. And there was that unfortunate moment for him where he had love 40, and then Carlos makes it 15-40. And at 15-40, a double fault is called on Carlos on a second serve down the tee. And the umpire came down, checked the mark, said, no, the ball, it caught the line. And the Hawkeye replay, TV replay, he backed up the linesman, said it was just wide. So look, it just was the word. It was bad for Zverev in the sense that in his mind, as soon as he heard the call, he's at 2-2. Then, in other words, he hears the call, it's great, I got the break, it's 2-2. then he sees the umpire approaching, probably is confident that the umpire will still see it as out, that he's just checking to be sure. And then when he sees that the umpire is not agreeing with him, anyway, Carlos manages to come all the way back and get that hold. And then Sasha almost goes down 2 breaks. He saves himself with that great angle backhand cross-court winner, and then has one more break point to get back to 3-all, and that did him in. Carlos played a good serve and volley point, and if Zverev could have held there, broken there for 3-all, and maybe served his way out to 4-3. He's starting to believe again. But you saw in the last 2 games, and that one brilliant pass from Carlos in the 7th game off the backhand one-handed pass. But Zverev I thought was mentally, he'd had it by then. Carlos lost one more point, and it was too bad. I thought the 5th set. Did you think the 5th set would be closer?
It did, and in some ways it was closer than the 6-2 we ended up getting, especially the 6 games. But I was very shocked at the 1-all game. I just could not believe, those errors. Like there was a double fault in there. There was a regulation back and long, and then the 2 volleys misses. One on the forehand where he had so much time to think about it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the first one, but the backhand volley that started it, there's no way he should. He just had to dump. All he had to do was put it anyway. He went for depth. He didn't have to, because Carlos was really in back. He was not going to be able to anywhere on that side, so that should never have been missed. And then, the forehand volley, he was pretty tight on the net. He was pretty close to the net. He just didn't quite know what he wanted to do. And then the double fault, and then the backhand. It was just he really surprised me there, because you just, if you're going to lose your serve, make him beat you, make him come up with something. But Carlos didn't have to do much in that game. That ended up being catastrophic for Zverev. And Carlos, once he got his nose out in front again, he was terrific. I thought he played some really good stuff those last few games. But that's because he really felt like he had him there. He knew the match he knew he was closing in on.
Yeah, for sure. And then I just could not believe that forehand also that Carlos had inside-out winner at 30-40 in that in the game. That it was 2-1, 30-40, and he comes up with this, must have hit that like 100 miles per hour and just in line with it. It was
great shot.
Audacious stuff. But, in Zverev's head, he's probably thinking it should be 2-all. I should be trying to get my nose up in front, serving. And
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And just disappointed that a call like that, I have to say, the umpires, I'm looking forward to the electronic lines. I felt all along, I never liked the idea when the challenge system came in that everybody thought we don't need it on clay, you can check the mark. That to me is ridiculous, because a player sees one mark and he's got the ball maybe touching the line. The umpire says no. They have disputes all the time, understandably, because the player is seeing it in his own favor, maybe, or just seeing it differently, honestly seeing it differently. But to me, I hope the French, I know Courier is not optimistic that the French will come in next year and go ahead and go along with the electronic lines, because they're traditionalists. But I wish they would do it, because I think it's best for the players. You just have this automatically, they're not worried about challenging. They're also not worried about the umpire coming down and changing it either. And I think everybody's better off. And I think this umpire meant well. And frankly, I don't think it changed the out. I don't think for a second that if Zverev wins that point, he wins the match. But obviously it would have just helped him to be back on serve and trying to see if he could get going again, and hurt him psychologically. And I don't know. To me, it's unnecessary. But and also my other point about that, Vansh, that's a serve down the center server. It's down the tee. The linesman is looking at that line from behind the court. He has a much better view from there than the umpire does from up above, looking down on the line from the side of the court. So again, I would want to be absolutely sure if I was the umpire. Am I absolutely certain? Am I going to go down there, or am I going to let this go? Because look what ends up happening, and obviously Carlos is happy, but Zverev is not. Unfortunate moment, but again, I don't want to blow it out of proportion, because I don't think in any way that cost Zverev the match.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on the last point in terms of it not affecting the outcome. And my other hope is that when they do get the electronic line calling, that the players have full sort of trust in the system, and it's not them sort of pointing at a mark that they've seen, and then there's some
I think they will
between that and the thing. Like, hopefully, it just avoids some of those other controversies that we've been getting throughout the whole clay swing.
I think they will, Vanch. I do. Now, it was interesting. What came up on the NBC telecast was they were talking about the fact, I think Ian Eagle, I think, said it. He was talking about how there's like a 2 millimeter margin for error. Okay, yes, but still, am I going to trust that over the linesman, or over the umpire overruling the linesman? Yes, I am. I still say, yeah, maybe it's not 100% perfect, but you got to believe that by and large, it's more right than a pair of eyes. That's how I'm looking at that. To get to your point, I think the players they'll like it, and they won't even bother trying to go point to the umpire to mark. They'll know it's done. The electronic line is the governing force, so it's done. And I think they'll like that better, rather than a linesman disagreeing with an umpire.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully the French Open will follow suit and we'll have electronic line calling.
I hope so.
But yeah, I mean, from a Zverev perspective, I mean, obviously, if Carlos loses this match, then we're talking about the 5-game stretch in the third set where he was up 5-2.
Yeah, right.
So it's it would be a different way to look at this match. But I too was also surprised by just how passive Zverev was at the start of the fourth. And then Alcaraz hit those 2 really amazing points to break at the start of the fourth. The forehand, banana shot passing winner that we've seen from Rafa so many times, and then also he hit this amazing lob in that game.
That was a beauty. It was a beauty. But again, you gotta dig in there. That's where you say, okay, I'm down a break. I've broken him a lot of times. I was down a break in the third set. So why not make a bigger push? And by the time he did, and Carlos played kind of a loose game at 4-love. I think he's already thinking about seeing the trainer, because he did immediately after that. So you get a little bit of a gift back there yourself, and then you lose your serve for the third time in the set. So there were 2 sets where he's losing his serve 3 times. That's very surprising for a server of his quality and class.
Yeah. The serve for Zverev itself, I thought would have more of an impact in the match than it actually ended up doing. And maybe some of that is Carlos's constant return position shifts and how he was so far behind the baseline and just trying to loop so many returns back and make Zverev create all the offense.
Right.
I did just think, when Carlos was so far back, Zverev to me is a really good server, and he has a really high first serve percentage, which is like crazy. He makes 75% of his first serves like for the whole season. But I think he's sacrificing a lot of his placement by just making so many first serves, and just because he's lowered the ball toss, and the double fault seem to be mostly.
You know what, Vanch? I couldn't agree more. And I felt at times he kind of gets out of that syndrome and does start going closer to the lines. But I thought to myself, okay, you're getting this 70 to 75%, sometimes 80%. Why don't you just be willing to go down to 63% and serve a lot more aces? It would be worth it. I think the trade-off would be worth it. But the problem here was, I think he felt, I don't know how you viewed this, but I felt with Carlos so far back, I think he, except for that wide one where, he did manage to do it when he was serving out the third set on the 30-all point, he did manage to get a perfect wide serve in the corner that Carlos couldn't touch. But that was going to be probably almost the only way he serves an ace, or a perfect tee serve. The tee serve was going to be absolutely perfect in the corner, and maybe he gets him with that. So it was smart of Carlos. The mystery to me, in a way, I know what you're saying, mixing it up, but I feel like Carlos was so successful when he was far back. I'm a little surprised that he and Ferreira didn't decide to just have him stay there, because it was a problem that Sasha was never really solving, and wasn't able to solve it later either. But it gets back to the point I made to you earlier. I just think, why not more wide ones, serve and volley on a wide serve in the deuce court more often? Could have tried that more in the ad court too. And he was not very flexible, or it just baffled me, because I think of him as one of the great servers in the game, but strategically he didn't have it right in his mind yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. And then Carlos, on the other hand, on the ad side, he has that really amazing kicker, and then he has a lot of options open. Like, he has an open forehand, where he has the whole corridor. He can do the backhand drop shot down the line, which he loves. And I also felt like at the third set, Alcaraz kind of lost his tactical clarity at the point where he was serving for the match because he was almost trying to, like, the first point he goes for a serve and volley, but he doesn't hit a spot. And Zverev has a world-class backhand and just,
Yeah, right,
sort of
right.
is able to coax an error. And then there's another point. Oh yeah, the break point where he just, Zverev hits that amazing pass. But I felt like Alcaraz was trying to attack it with pace and just go super hard and flat at it rather
He
than.
did. He did. And it burned him because the pass came back so fast he could barely move. So it's true. It's true. He did lose his way. He did lose his clarity of mind
And
a
I didn't
bit.
think the 5-all game was great from
the
him
thing
either.
is, Vanch, the thing is that he always gets it back. There may be brief stretches where his mind is muddled, but that doesn't last. And that's not necessarily true of Sasha. So in the end, I think that Alcaraz was definitely savvier and more strategic, and overall imposed his will better as a result.
Yeah, that's very true. I also just felt like at times, Alcaraz was the one obviously creating. He's the more inventive player. He's the one, more willing to make stuff happen out there. And I feel like for Zverev to win one of these majors, he has to come out of his shell in that really big moment when he's leading in some of these 5-set matches. Because when he's trailing, like you saw the second set, when he just goes after his forehand and it becomes such a weapon, and it has the capability of doing it. Like he hit 110 down the line, he's able to just accelerate on it. And when he just sort of drops back and he starts playing this passive sort of tennis, then he's trying to almost just wait for errors, and they just don't come. The very, very best don't give it to you.
No, you're right. And where he gets in trouble is that it works as it did if you're playing Holger Rune or you're playing Alex de Minaur.
Yeah.
It works if you're playing Casper Ruud, but it doesn't work against Carlos, and it wouldn't have worked against Sinner either.
No. Yeah, for sure. So, like I look at Zverev and I'm like, you've won 6 Masters 1000s, you've been number 2, you've won a couple of ATP finals, you have an Olympic gold. Like that's the resume of a major champion, and he's by far the best player, currently for sure, and then maybe arguably ever to not have a slam with that resume. So all of a sudden he has all this scar tissue building, and he's 27 years old, and just it gets harder and harder. I don't think it gets any easier.
No, and this was a golden opportunity because he gave himself the confidence boost by winning Rome, and he knew he was on a high. And in his mind, I think he was confident he would beat Rafa. He wasn't taking it for granted, but he felt like he would handle that, and he did a nice job. And obviously, he got himself in trouble against Griekspoor. It was a bit fortunate to come from 2 breaks down in the 5th, down 4-1, 2 breaks, and win the match in a tie break. But still, it isn't going to get any easier. And he had set the stage for it here, and he beaten Carlos on this court before. He's beaten him in Australia this year. It's always going to be tougher to do it in a final. Carlos is a great big match player. He's proving it to us now, 3-0 in major finals now. But I feel like it is going to be tough. And that this was, he'd already let the 2020 U.S. Open go against Thiem from 2-0 in a break up in the 3rd, and from 5-3 in the 5th serving for the match. And so he had a great chance to win that. And now I think he kept talking about his journey. You read his quotes. I think in his mind, he felt like he was finally ready. And it didn't happen. And it'd be one thing if he lost this match 3-4-3, or if he hadn't won the 3rd set and he'd lost this match in 4, but he gave himself such an opportunity, and he was not able to exploit it. So, yeah, and it's going to be hard, because what happens if he gets to some more finals, and there's Sinner and there's Alcaraz, and maybe Novak in one more, depending on Novak's comeback. None of those guys are going to make it easy for him by any means. And even if it's Medvedev, even if it's Daniel, I mean, look, we saw what happened in Australia again this year. That's been a nightmare matchup for him. So no, it's not going to be easy. And I think this one will linger for quite a long time, because I think in his mind, he thought everything was sort of setting up for him, that this was his moment, that, the winning Rome and dealing with Rafa in the first round and surviving a couple of 5-setters there against Griekspoor and Holger Rune, and then making his way into the final and putting on a good performance. And so, yeah, I'm concerned for him, whether it happens. And you're so right about the resume. And think about it, all those Masters 1000s, two year-end championships, won Olympic gold. I mean, it's like, it's a fantastic, you can't win. Granted, we're talking best of three, but he has no issues in best of five. It's not an issue, but he's incredibly fit. I didn't think he got tired here against Carlos, to tell you the truth. I think he was fine. So that's not the issue. It's in his mind. It's emotional. It's mental. It's inner belief.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, it could have been even worse for him physically if he had been pushed harder by Ruud and De Minaur. If De Minaur wins that second set, I thought that was really unfortunate for the semifinal with Casper, just because given Casper's, struggles with the stomach, he came out playing so well in that first set, and I think that's like 2 years in a row where one of them had been somewhat physically
true. It is. It absolutely is. But you're putting your finger on something, because of course he's come off the five setters with Griekspoor and back to back and Holger, and then he manages to get by. De Minaur should have won the second set, obviously, and yes, he lost a set to Casper, but then it was pretty easy from there the rest of the way. So that didn't take, those two matches didn't take. So I think he kind of got it. Conceivably, he could have spent a lot more time on the court in those matches and did not. So all of the rigor that he'd been through in the middle of the tournament was behind him, and he'd won, a couple of matches pretty comfortably. So I think physically he was absolutely ready for that final.
Yeah. And Steve, I want to move on and talk about Djokovic and Nadal and look ahead to the grass a little bit. But before I do that, I want to ask you a little bit about Carlos's high highs and low lows, because it's very interesting to watch a player sort of hit like 11 out of 10 for some patches like this and play some of your best tennis in the biggest moments. And in fifth set, he has such a remarkable 5-set record, right? He's 11-1 in 5 sets.
Yeah, right.
And he's like you said, you mentioned the big finals. He's 8-1 in big finals now. And the one final that he lost, he had a match point again. It was against Novak Djokovic. So you look at those things and you're like, this is a really generational player. But then in between matches, you see him like his level just drop off so dramatically and hit a 4, and then you see him hit an 11, and he's able to find it in these best of 5-set matches. But how do you kind of see? Do you see the fluctuations like changing? As he gets older and he becomes more mature? And
yeah, I do. I'm actually pretty encouraged. I mean, look at the way that he won this match. There was nothing. The so-called winning ugly formula, I wouldn't go as far as call it winning ugly, but a lot of it was the high loopers, rolling the ball up high, helping Sasha to self-destruct, making him think. He didn't try to be too flashy unless he was in a really good position to do it. So I am encouraged by that, and I think there will be some growth in that area, and we'll start seeing more. I don't know, 11 out of 10. We'll see 8, 9 out of 10, but consistently, where he's near the top of his game, because he's ridiculously good for 21. I mean, I think that the prevailing view among most authorities is, and they're all saying it, the likes of Becker, they're all saying it, that at 21, he's better than Roger or Novak or Rafa was at 21. And I would agree with that. And so now it's just going to be a matter of, when you have so many options, I think, to me, of the three guys, he resembles Federer more than he does Djokovic or Nadal. Mm-hmm. And I think he will learn more and more about what's going to work for him against certain guys, and he'll be willing to win with whatever it takes, even if it's not flashy. And I think he'll find a level that's more consistent. But one of the ways he's going to do that, Vansh, is that he has to try, and it's not easy to do, to avoid these injuries. He's just had so many issues, and the arm is the latest, but it goes back to when he was hurt, when he lost to Felix at the 2021 US Open after he'd beaten Tsitsipas in 5 sets. Just too many things have happened since then that have kept him out for, significant stretches, and kind of made it hard for him to get back into that rhythmic way that he would like, back into his sort of natural match-playing rhythm. And you can't be out as much as he is. He's recovered well. He's done a great job. It's incredible that he could do this with one clay court tournament. But I think the level that you're asking, that what you're getting at, will happen especially he has a particularly good chance to do it if hopefully he has fewer injuries in the years ahead. That's my biggest worry with him, are those injuries, because otherwise the sky is the limit.
Yeah, definitely. And he's also just so intense in how he practices and trains, and just, how much he gives every single match. So, the hope is that he's able to, yeah, I mean, find a balance where he's not like chasing every single ball down, and,
Right.
yeah.
So I'm encouraged. I'm pretty optimistic. It's a very valid point for you to raise, and I'm concerned about it too. But I'm also pretty sure he's going to conquer that, and that the consistency will be there. That we'll see a growing consistency in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. But so I look at this tournament, and obviously the biggest name we haven't talked about yet is Novak Djokovic, and he had those 5-set thrillers with Musetti and Cerundolo in the third and fourth round, and plays Geneva the week before, and there's some some more doubts about him given the season that he's had. Obviously, the water bottle incident in Rome, and the fact that he hadn't won a title coming in. But once he won that Cerundolo match, was there a feeling in your mind that he may pull out of this tournament, or he may just he may not want to risk it, especially with the Olympics coming up, and just given, because towards the end of that match he was moving a lot better than he was for a period in between. But I guess that was just the painkillers kicking in and kind of doing.
Yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said, and I believe it, because he apparently had to take the limit. They gave him as much as they could do legally, rightfully. So yeah, I think it did kick in, and it made a big difference. And he played some beautiful tennis toward the end of that fourth through the fifth, even better than he played in winning the 6-1 first set, which was before Cerundolo really started to find his range off the forehand. So yeah, I remember hoping when he came off the court that whatever this injury was, it was going to be, that maybe it was a kind of injury. It wasn't going to be, a meniscus, and that therefore he might be able to play with more painkillers, the way guys have, the way Rafa has, getting shots all the way through the 2022 French, or Pete Sampras had to have the injections every day that led the 2000 Wimbledon when he won his 13th major. And I was hoping it was going to be something like that, because I thought he got a great, it was such a boost to him to win the back-to-back 5-setters, to beat Musetti 6-love in the fifth, to play as well as he did in the fifth against Cerundolo, that he was picking up confidence. And I think, if he'd been healthy, he would have beaten Ruud, and it would have been a great match with Zverev, and who knows what would have happened. So yeah, that was, I just think that he did the right thing, Vansh. He got right on with it. He found out what he was dealing with. He did his MRI. He found out what he had, and he immediately did the surgery. That was very smart. And as we said earlier, it's almost surely keep him out of Wimbledon, but at least he can get his season back on track, starting hopefully with the Olympics, and then moving on to the U.S. Open in the fall, and trying to see if he can finish the year strong and get some titles, because he's got 98 titles. I do think he'd like to grab those other two as soon as he can and get to 100. That's a milestone for him, and it'll be interesting to see. Sad for him, though, that Wimbledon looks like it's out of the question.
Yeah, that's going to be quite strange, Wimbledon without Djokovic, the 7-time champion. But I also want to talk a little bit about the Musetti match, because obviously there was a lot of talk about the scheduling. And he was really hard done by that, to go on court at 11 o'clock, finish that match at 3, and it just sort of ruined your whole tournament rhythm in terms of recovering for the next match. And the astounding level that he was able to find in sets 4 and 5, when I really felt like he was on the brink, because Musetti did such a good job of taking that second set. Novak had the set point at 6-5, and he wins the next 3 points. And Musetti is a player who has given him a lot of trouble, particularly on slow clay in the past, 2 sets to love up.
Well,
3 years ago here. So what did you kind of think of that match?
Sorry to interrupt. I apologize. I thought Musetti played much better in this match than he did in the one in 21.
Yeah.
I felt like Novak kind of he had a break up in that first set. I think he was 4-1 up in the tiebreak, and he lost the tiebreak. He lost the second in a tiebreak. He kind of dug a hole for himself, and then he came blitzing out of it. And by the middle of the fifth, Musetti was dead on his feet. But this time, the level, I think Novak was right. He said he was playing the tennis, that you said he was playing the tennis of his life. Because, and in the cool conditions, it seemed like there was no shot that could be penetrating enough that Novak could hit to finish him off. This guy could run them all down and spit them back. And he played amazing tennis. But you're right, the second set was so big because, excuse me, Djokovic, not only did he have that set point in the breaker that you mentioned, but he had 4-1 in the set.
Yeah.
He had to break 2 more holds and he could have been 2 sets up. But that's what made the finish so, he gave the crowd a lot of credit for, he saluted the crowd for coming around to him at 2-all in the fourth. But the way he played from 2-all in the fourth through the end of the fifth was spectacular. And kind of similar the way he finished things up against Cerundolo. So those were such uplifting victories. And I guess the one plus for him, see, he didn't lose his body. He lost to his body. No player beat him. You don't want to have to withdraw from the tournament, but it'd be different if he'd gone out and maybe been a little subpar and lost to Ruud in the quarters, or, that would have been disappointing after the way he had played. So in a sense, he did get something out of the tournament. He had that spirit that we hadn't really seen from him most of this year, Vansh, the spirit and the sense of wanting to be out there and enjoying competing and willing his way to the up to and through the finish line. So there were really good signs there. And now he's just going to have to pick up where he left off as soon as he's ready to play again, which hopefully is right back there in Paris at the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone else will be looking to join him there is Rafael Nadal, because, obviously a really tough draw to land Alexander Zverev. But were you sort of optimistic that, he can make a run at the Olympics based on what you saw in his first round match against Zverev, assuming that, his body doesn't let him down anytime between now and then? He's supposed to play a tournament in Hamburg, or he's signed up for one, and he might even play doubles with Alcaraz there as well. But because he did kind of leave it open at the end about him, coming back next year, and it seems like a really tall order. But at the same time, there were some positive signs in that Zverev match in terms of.
Yeah, there were. Does it make me optimistic about the Olympics? No, but I'm not pessimistic either. I'm sort of in between, because I feel like, okay, what we don't know, what everybody said, Vansh, I know that I heard it from tons of people and a lot of commentators too. They all say, oh, if only he hadn't been playing Zverev, he would have beaten so many guys in the draw. I don't really think we can say that one way or another. You're playing your opponent on that day. He did what he had to do against Zverev and put forth a good effort. That doesn't mean that he would have beaten a lot of other guys, but it doesn't mean he would have lost to them either. We just didn't get the chance to see it. But what was encouraging to me was simply that he played well in all 3 sets. He got off to a slow start and lost his serve in the first game with a double fault and some drop shot errors, some mistakes, and kind of gave Zverev a bit of a cushion, but then competed hard all the way up to the last game when he got broken again at 3-5. And then we saw him take that lead in the second set, obviously, and serve for the set, and Zverev breaks him at love. But, it was Zverev's brilliance in that game. Rafa may be a bit tentative, but it was really much more about Zverev's rising to the occasion to break back. And then he got to 15-40 in the next game, and Zverev held and finally got him in the tie break. And then we saw in the third that even in the third, Rafa takes a 2-love lead. Zverev, and then Zverev gets back to 2-all, and Rafa makes a tough stand to go up 3-2 and never won another game. But you can't say he played badly in any of the sets. He played really well in the second set. We saw some vintage Rafa running forehand pass in the tie break and a great forehand stab volley. There were really some nice flashes. And physically, considering that it was a pretty punishing 3 hours, he looked good to me right to the end. I just think he knew it was tough to be down 2 sets and struggling to stay in there, but he didn't look like he was fading physically at all. So there were a lot of good signs, but I just don't know. But, again, obviously with a decent draw at the Olympics, maybe he can get off to a good start and build some confidence, but there are going to be a lot of top guys there, all of them just as eager as he is and wanting to get a medal. And I don't really know what to expect. That's what I'm really interested to see what he can produce there. And also, maybe, I don't know, is best of 3 to his advantage now? You could argue that, but somebody also could get hot. You could get a Lehechka type performance like we saw on the clay court circuit this time, where somebody gets really hot for 2 sets and knocks him off 5-4. So I just don't know. I mean, I hope for his sake he's healthy there, and there's no more injuries. He got through that clay court stretch very nicely physically and seemed to improve. That's the encouraging part. The way he was talking, he was actually improving. It got actually better by the time of Paris than it was initially in Barcelona and Madrid. You know, it got better. Barcelona, Madrid, Rome. I mean, by the time he got to Paris in the fourth tournament, he was feeling stronger and his body seemed to be responding better. That's all good. So let's just hope we get to see him play some good matches. And I certainly would be very surprised if he won a gold. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be shocked to see him, you know, quarters or semis and doing something good.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot depends on the draw. Like you were saying, you know, 64-player draw. They're 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3 sets rather than 3
What
out
do
of
you?
5.
So what's your ceiling for him there?
Contending for a bronze medal if like things go really, really
Okay.
well. That's the best scenario I could possibly see.
Yeah. Okay.
But,
yeah, I'm with you.
But anything past that would be really, really shocking for me. But in terms of the rest of the men's field, I feel like for the most part, we had most of the seeds hold up. I mean, Rublev went out in the third round. That was a bit of a surprise with the performance there. And I felt like Medvedev, there was a chance for him as well after he won the first set against de Minaur. But he's another guy that I'm kind of wondering a lot about because he hasn't won a title since Rome of last year. And he's put himself in so many finals and semis. And, you know, the clay court swing is always going to be somewhat tougher for him. But with the grass and, you know, these matchups with Alcaraz and Sinner, most notably, but also a lot of other players who on the right day can really, you know, pick him off. So I'm just kind of interested to see the rebound from him.
Listen, it's going to be very interesting because, I mean, if you go back to Rome last year and then he ends up losing in the first round of Roland Garros, got to the semis of Wimbledon and Carlos beat him decisively, got to the finals of the Open where he beat Carlos, finished the year strong, as you said, the final against Sinner, you know, a couple of finals, semis of the year-end championships. It was very solid. And then on the brink of winning the Australian, where he's up 2-0 against Sinner in the final. And finally, all of the rigor caught up to him, all of the wear and tear of all those 5-set matches. So I think that ended up being really dampened his spirits. He wouldn't admit that, nor should he. But I'm concerned about him now because then, you know, that kept him out for a while. And yes, he has a good Indian Wells, but the telling part will be whatever hard courts he plays leading up to the Open, what he decides to enter, and how he does at the Open. Because, you know, if he has more losses like the one, and that was kind of a routine, you know, 4-set loss and fairly conclusive loss. And he said afterwards that he didn't feel like he wasn't beating himself up, and de Minaur surprised him with how he played. And okay, but it's like for a player of his ilk, of his stature, that's a very long time to go without a title, very long time. And who's to know whether he's going to get one this year at all? So if I'm in his camp, I'm a little worried. What are you hearing about Gilles Simon? How much input is he having right now?
Well, there was that quote in the beginning in Dubai where they came up with a list of like 16 players that are, you know, that are troublesome matchups for him. And I think tactically he must be helping him, you know, sort of strategy wise. But I don't know if there's anything specific technically or, you know, more scouting wise that he would be doing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if he's like the main coach. I think Joe Savara might still be the main guy in the picture.
Oh, I think that's true. I just wondered whether Gilles, you know, how he's approaching, because I'm just saying he hasn't solved the problem. I'm not saying it's his fault. Hasn't been able to get him over the hump on this. And yeah, I mean, look, Wimbledon will be interesting too. I mean, you know, he did well last year. You know, can he get back to a semi, or does he get picked off earlier? So yeah, he's in a tough spot, Vansh, and he must be concerned. He knows that Alcaraz and Sinner are just going to get better and better. And, you know, he so badly wants to win that second major. But again, we talked about how Zverev has his work cut out for him to get his first, but Daniel may be equally hard-pressed to get his second.
Yeah, that's so true. And obviously there's such a big difference, you know, between 1 and 2. And then after you pass 2, then it's like more or less gravy. But To get
Yeah.
one is the hardest, and then to get to two is also hard. So that's that's definitely where we're at with Medvedev. But I guess if I switch over to the women's, Iga Swiatek just continues to dominate this tournament, and obviously we have to talk about this second round match with Naomi Osaka. But the way she just rolled everyone else after that, she lost 20 games against the whole field and 17 alone in that match against Osaka. So, and now she's 35-2 at Roland Garros, and she's going on just such an absurd pace. Chrissy Everett was saying that she thinks Iga is going to pass her record of 7 RGs. So it looks like if she continues like this, it very well looks like she would.
Well, I think I'd be very surprised. I'm thinking a tie is a good chance, and breaking it also a pretty good chance. But that's a lot of years, and she's fully capable. She's been so dominant there, and I'm just so impressed that she could survive this harrowing skirmish that she had with Naomi, where she was hanging on by the skin of her teeth and saves it from match point down, to then blitzing the field the way you just described and just pretty much embarrassing everyone else. So yeah, she'll win a lot more. She's a great clay court player. I'm hoping now we're going to see some growth in her, how she performs on hard and grass. Wimbledon, I would hope this would give her a lift going into Wimbledon, that we could see her really make a run there this year, Vansh. And she should be ready. I think she should be ready at the end of the summer to get a second U.S. Open title, and then finally go back to Australia and see if she can turn things around there. Because that's not been a happy place for her. But on clay, there's just no denying it. 4 of her 5 majors at Roland Garros, many more to come. But yeah, let's talk about the Osaka match, though, because yes, Iga survived. She deserved it. Her composure got her through it. It was composure, willpower, poise. All of those qualities are, to me, the reason why she won, because she was being sorely outplayed. She actually, Naomi had a set point in the first set, and Iga managed to hit a ball behind her, hit a good shot and kind of coaxed an arrow off Naomi's backhand, had her a little off balance, or Naomi might have won that set. Then Naomi blitzes through that second set, brilliant second set, serving bigger and bigger. And when she was on the run, she was just tagging the forehand. The forehand was as good as I've ever seen it, Vanch, and I didn't expect this on clay. And then we saw her survive some difficult early service games in the third set. She kept bailing herself out from break points down, a great effort to go up 4-1 with a break point for 5-1. And she tried it back and down the line. It was the kind of shot that she was automatically making up until then. But I think a little tension was starting in, because that 5-1 lead, extra break probably would have been enough. Couldn't get the break there, but still held a really easy hold to go 5-2, then had love 30. And Iga played a great backhand cross-court into the corner, literally into the corner, unstoppable, that Naomi couldn't get it back. And that made it 15-30. And then Naomi pressed a little bit the rest of that game. She missed a couple of forehands, and you felt like that was another missed opportunity, a big missed opportunity to just finish it off and not have to serve it out. And then serving it out, she had the 30-15 point, an easy forehand down the line, Vanch. I'm sure you still have in the eye of your mind, where she just had she makes that shot, and Iga's running toward the open court. So it's a winner if it goes over the net. It's 40-15. Instead, that made it 30-all. She still got back from break point down to match point, but missed her first serve. And then on the second serve, Iga made a great angled backhand return that Naomi couldn't get back. And still, the games that followed were still tough, long games. She had chances even after that, but never got back to match point again. And Iga managed to finish it off 7-5 in the third. But I thought it was a stupendous effort from Naomi. I'm very encouraged about her going forward. Starting with Wimbledon, I know, we haven't seen it on the grass from her yet, but if you serve as well as she does, she ought to be able to make an impression there, and certainly across the summer on the hard courts and leading up to and through the U.S. Open. That's where I hope she will use that performance as a source of encouragement. But listen, it was brilliance and inspirational display on her part, and Iga showing us what a great champion she is to survive the onslaught. That's what I loved about it. I mean, she just survived an onslaught. There were times when there was literally no way she could respond. She just had to hope that Naomi would cool off because she couldn't impose herself for so long in that match. It was Naomi who was dictating everything. So I just felt like it was a heartbreaker for Naomi and just a tremendous win for Iga.
Yeah, going back to what you said, I think Naomi also looked at it like a huge positive. Like when I listened to her press conference and everything, she seemed in such good spirits. And so,
Who did, Naomi?
yeah, and mentally she seems like she's in a much better place than 3 years ago, and it feels like she's ready to embrace the challenges that are coming with the comeback, and she just keeps getting better and better. I was very impressed by her Rome run because, she made some really good progress there, got to the round of 16, beat some really quality players, and it seemed like it had been building and building. And yeah, maybe we see it in the hard courts. Maybe she makes a run. And I've always thought she could do better on grass than what she has done. So
no doubt. But just think, Vansh, who's to say? I don't think she would have gone on to win Roland Garros if she'd beaten Iga, but she certainly could have gone deep. But it doesn't matter anymore.
It seems.
Exactly. But she should still be very proud of the effort, because even with the good Rome, I couldn't quite have envisioned this. I could have seen maybe a 4-5 or 4-6 or something respectable, but this was far more than respectable. So I feel like, she's on the right track. I wouldn't be shocked to see her, by the way, by the Open, be right in there down the home stretch, contending for the title. I wouldn't be shocked if she could just have a good tournament or two before that, have a good Wimbledon and do something over the summer, just get get back into that habit of winning. And then I think in New York, she could be very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. It did sort of also help her that these were indoor conditions.
Yeah.
She didn't have to deal with the sun and the wind, and,
that helps.
his ball wasn't bouncing as high as it may outdoors. So I think that was definitely a part of it as well, but I was not expecting that display, especially sets 2 and 3. That was,
It was breathtaking to watch, Vanch. It really was. It was. I mean, there were times I couldn't believe my eyes, and I felt, and I thought she'd cool off. I thought she might cool off after the second set. She didn't. She kept going, and to her credit, even after the match point got away, the 5-4 game, the 5-0 game, she had more chances, and I felt like, okay, she's really in there competing. And finally, Iga closed her out in the last game. I believe that was at 15, but. It was, she didn't fold. After the match point eluded her, she didn't fold. I also like that. The fight was still there. And your point is well taken, because she seems happy when she's out there competing now. She's enjoying it. And if things go a little wrong, if things go a little wrong, she accepts it and just keeps talking to herself and trying to stay positive and stay optimistic. And things are turning for her, and she's a great player. And we all know she was kind of beleaguered there for a while, Vanch. This is a different person right now. She's happy being a mother. You feel like she really wants to be out there, and that was not the case a couple of years back. She's the enjoyment of the game, the passion. She's revitalized.
Yeah, and also when you were mentioning, Iga's poise and her composure and how she managed to, turn the match around with such solid play. I mean, I'm thinking now the last 7 or 8 months have just been so stellar from her. You take out the Australian Open loss, and she's 56-4 since the end of the US Open, and she's accumulated 7 titles since then. And to me, it's probably, I'm going to say it's more impressive than her 2022 37 match win streak, just purely because of, I feel like the competition is a lot better now than it used to be a couple of years ago in terms of, Sabalenka improving, Rybakina improving, Coco improving. And I feel like she's pulling out so many tight matches now, like where it used to be that, she would lose some belief after playing a really tight first set, or she would kind of get down on herself. Like now she's won that match against Sabalenka. She's won the match against Collins in Australia, and she's won this match. So it's
no, it's true. It's true. That's made a big difference. Completely agree with you about the level of competition now versus the 37 match streak. So yeah, it is. But I'd like to see her take it to the next stage now. And I think it'd be a little disappointing if she didn't win one more major this year.
Yeah.
Whether it's Wimbledon or the Open, and possibly both, but certainly one more, because she's so far and away number one in the world. Your record is just so prodigious, everywhere else. But she's worthy of a second major this year. She shouldn't just be holding on to number one and winning the French again, but no other major. So I'm sure that's her attitude too. I'm sure that's what she's striving for.
Yeah, and on the women's side, it's hard to see like a clear-cut favorite for the grass. I mean, if
True.
Rybakina was healthy, I might say she's the favorite. But you look at Rybakina, Sabalenka, Coco. You have to put Ons Jabeur in there as well, and then you put Iga in there too. And it's like it feels like any one of these five players, or maybe even a couple more, could win this title.
Yeah, I might put Collins in there, despite Roland Garros. I might, because overall she's been so good since winning those two tournaments in the spring. So might throw her in there, but you're right. And actually that's to her benefit. They're all playing well, but she's the front runner. She's she's the clear number one in the world. So I hope that's gonna show. And maybe what it will take is just what you were alluding to. Maybe what it takes is a third round scare at Wimbledon, that she survives 7-5 in the third and then just keeps going, because she's now more and more sure of herself in the tight corners of these matches.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a match like that last year and against Bencic in the fourth round, and then the Collins match this year, and I felt like it didn't quite carry over, but this time it really did. She felt so comfortable on the clay, and it felt like she could just roll everybody else. But that also goes back to the matchup with Coco, because I feel like Coco came out with a completely different game plan than she did a year ago, and she just couldn't find that right balance between offense and defense, and kind of just played the match like a Naomi or a Rybakina or Sabalenka would. And she tried something totally different, but
she did. Gilbert was motioning her he wanted some more looping shots at one stage, and he was motioning to her. But yeah, I think it was worth a try. But I just think, unfortunately, I don't think that she can solve that problem on clay against Iga. But she plays Iga at the Open or Wimbledon. It's a different story. It's a much, much closer match. And it'll be interesting to see what she can make of that situation. I just think at Roland Garros, it's too much. Even though she proved by getting to the semis that she's been in the final there a couple of years ago too, so she knows what she's doing on clay. But Iga is just too good for her there. That was another stellar display from Iga.
Yeah, I've also heard some commentators talk about the Iga and Coco matchup and compare it to like a Roddick or a Roddick versus Federer rivalry, in the sense that Federer was the premier player. He had Roddick's number in a lot of the big matches, and it was just kind of a matchup that he couldn't solve. Do you see it like changing, getting more competitive? Do you see there's potential for more inroads? And if let's say they play 12 more times, do you think it'll be 11-1, or do you think it'll be a little closer?
No. They played 12 more times. It might be 9-3.
Yeah.
But I think Coco's going to get her wins here and there. Best case scenario 8-4, but she will beat her some. She will on other surfaces. It's just not going to happen on the clay. I don't quite see I understand why people would make that Roddick Federer comparison. I won't go that far.
Interesting, yeah. And this tournament, we had such stability on the women's side when it came to the top four, that I felt like we were going to get another top four we were going to get like all the top four in the semifinals. That hadn't happened at Roland Garros in over 30 years. The last time was 1992.
Yeah.
So we were close to that. Like we were 2 matches away from that. So it was kind of surprising to see Sabalenka and Rybakina both lose. If one of them lost, I think that would have been understandable. But both of them, that was certainly the twist I didn't see coming.
Yeah, Sabalenka definitely. I believe she was really kind of crippled by the stomach bug. She did not look right out there. Rybakina just got beat. I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought that she could lose that match. But I don't think there was anything wrong with her physically at all, or that she had any kind of a stomach issue. She just got outplayed. And it was surprising, because I think she's very capable on clay. But as you alluded to, Rybakina, if she's on and things are going right at Wimbledon, she's going to be very dangerous there again. We know she's done it once before. She can win it again, and she'll be right in the mix. And obviously that serve's going to help her even more on the grass. So I'll be watching her closely in London.
Yeah, I will as well, especially because she's due a big major run. It hasn't happened since Australian Open that she's been past the quarters in a major, and she's doing so well outside of the majors.
Yeah.
I think at some point she's going to turn the corner, and she keeps getting these like illnesses and viruses that make her pull out of tournaments, and recovery sometimes is tricky for her. But
yeah, and when you won a major, she knows she'll get going again. Yeah, she's had a string of bad majors, but that's bound to change if you look at how she plays. I mean, I expect it to change at Wimbledon. If she's not in the semis of Wimbledon, I'll be very surprised.
yeah, that's a good bet for sure. So yeah, I think that about rounds our Roland Garros recap. Do you have any other players you wanted to talk about, or you feel like we've sort of covered it all on the men's and women's?
No, we covered it all. Just to get back to the beginning, I do hope, because I'm with not expecting Novak to be at Wimbledon, that the trade-off is that we get Sinner Alcaraz again, and then maybe they give us another 5-setter, but a higher quality one. And I suspect it would be for a number of reasons. And just fascinated to see whether Sinner can turn the tables and avoid a third loss in a row. But as you said, it's tended to go back and forth. It's 5-4 for Carlos now. Then maybe Sinner goes up 6-5, and Carlos turns it and goes up 7-6. They're most likely, by the time they played, we're only talking about 9 matches. By the time they played, say, 20, I don't expect much of a difference. I think, but I do think the next one, I just keep thinking that next one, whether it's Wimbledon or anywhere else, it's a big one for Sinner.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm just so fascinated by this rivalry between these two great players, already 4 majors between them. And they just continue to raise the bar. So we'll be watching it all unfold with the grass season, and we'll do another one of these pretty shortly now, a month from now after Wimbledon ends. So looking forward to that, Steve. Thanks so much for your time.
Same here, Vansh. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks.